How did a woman of color who grew up in poverty in Tanzania go on to become a software engineer and vice president of IBM, even though she was a single mother and struggled with imposter syndrome? She changed her mindset and found her voice. When my guest today, Shalmina Abji, started her career, she struggled with negative mental chatter and a fear of speaking up due to self-doubt. She learned to recognize this as the voice of fear and to amplify her voice of courage with empowering reasons for taking action. If you are in a leadership role or want to be, and you have negative mental chatter or fear of speaking up, yet you want to build your skills and competencies to advance your career, then you will love this very powerful interview. In part one of this two-part interview and blog post, we will address how to get useful feedback from your manager and colleagues on your strengths and growth areas, what specific ways you can take on stretch assignments and challenging roles to build key competencies, advice for someone who feels isolated or unsure of how to build important workplace relationships because of their gender or ethnicity. Join me and Shalmina Abji today in one of the most important and impactful leadership interviews I have ever done. You will get actionable steps you can use to advance, especially if you are in tech, are a person of color, or like most of us, have negative self-talk.
Welcome to Women's Leadership Podcast, showing you how to influence people, improve your performance, and advance your career. Brought to you by women's leadership and career expert Sabrina Braham and womensleadershipsuccess.com. Here's your chance to meet women trendsetters leading the way to success, accomplishment, and balance in business and life. No matter if you're a manager, CEO, or entrepreneur, join Sabrina for coaching and no-nonsense advice to improve your career and bottom line.
This is Women's Leadership Success, episode number 130. Shalmina Abji is a TEDx speaker, board member, former vice president at IBM, and an angel investor. She started her career as a software engineer and then moved into sales and sales leadership, leading global teams to deliver over $1 billion in annual revenues and serving as a key decision maker in hiring and promoting hundreds of professionals. She received extensive leadership training at IBM, Harvard University, and UCLA. As a global empowerment speaker, Abji has addressed attendees at companies, conferences, and colleges that include Google, Edward Jones, National Center for Women in Technology, Black Women in STEM, and Harvard. Welcome, Shalmina. So excited to have you on the program today. And your book, Show Your Worth, is one of my favorite books I have ever read. And as my audience knows, I'm an avid researcher and reader, and I do not say that lightly. It is well written. It is so inspiring. It just really, really moved me.
Well, thank you so much, Sabrina. First of all, it's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
This kind of testimony coming from a leader like you who has vast experience and reads so much means the world to me. So thank you.
Well, you are welcome. And also going to mention that a link to your book and a link to your website will be up on Women's Leadership Success. So be sure and go there, and you can get more information about Shalmina after the show. So to begin with, tell us about how you grew up and what your journey was like.
Yeah. So Sabrina, I grew up humble beginnings in a small town in Tanzania called Mwanza. And, watching my parents struggle. They worked so hard to put food on the table. My mom, especially with a fourth grade education, she used to cook for people, and we used to sell food on the streets. I was convinced that if I obtained a college degree, then I would be able to lift myself and my family out of poverty. That was a big, lofty goal because, as I mentioned, the town in which I grew up, Mwanza, did not have education past 10th grade. No one in my family had obtained a college degree. People like us did not qualify for bank loans. But I was so stubbornly determined to do this. And with the love and support of my family, I was able to achieve this. But it required me to leave home when I was 15 so I could continue to pursue my dream of lifting my family and myself out of poverty.
Was it unusual for a female to get educated in Tanzania? Is that an issue?
So I wouldn't call it an issue. However, most women, if they did go to college, the two professions that were pursued was becoming a secretary or becoming a hairdresser. At that time, it wasn't like a aesthetics and beautician and all that. It was basically hairdressing or a secretary. And I knew that would not lift us out of our poverty. So that's not what I wanted to pursue.
So you went to India to begin with to get your education?
My first degree in mathematics, I did get it from India. And it was very much a financial decision. It was the least expensive way for me to obtain a college degree. And then I was also able to bring clothes from India to Tanzania and sell them and make money to pay for my education. However, Sabrina, after I obtained my degree in mathematics and I went back to Tanzania, I learned that I wasn't going to make enough money to lift my family and myself out of poverty. And that's when I decided to come to the United States to obtain a college degree in computer science because I had read in a magazine that if you're good at math, you could program computers. And if you can program computers, you can make a lot of money. So I said, all right, sign me up.
And the book, of course, has so many incredible details of this story. And having been raised in poverty and also feeling like I wasn't smart enough to do anything, I really enjoyed your stories. And I think for so many women, no matter what country we were raised in, we haven't been trained to have confidence or feel like we can do things. And so much of your story, you talk about how you develop that. So I want to ask you a few questions about that. You said, like, when in India and even when you got to the United States, there was a lot of mental chatter going on. How did you overcome that? And how can the women listening, the men listening, how can they overcome that negative chatter that says, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do it? What can you say about that?
Yeah. Sabrina, my negative mental chatter really started after I joined the workplace.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's interesting because I was determined to obtain a college degree. Nothing was going to get in my way. I graduated. Now, having said that, the university that I went to is a small university in Wisconsin, in La Crosse. And so no one came to interview students there to offer jobs. They go to all the Ivy League colleges. Mm-hmm. And so I went to a conference to look for a job and I handed over 300 resumes. Even though I was on a dean's list and I had worked 35 to 40 hours a week putting myself through college, no one wanted to even interview me because I did not have the right visa status. I was on a student visa and I only had a 1 year, what's called on-the-job practical training visa.
Yeah.
So on the last day, a technology startup company based in St. Paul, Minnesota, offered a job. And they were building the world's fastest supercomputer at the time. And the $27,000 that they offered me as my starting salary, Sabrina, was more money than my parents could make in 10 years. And I thought, that's it. We're never going to be poor again. I showed up to work with a spring in my step, really grateful for the opportunity. And then I started looking around and I realized 2,000 engineers, there is not one person that looks like me. There's not one person that speaks like me. And by now, I had been in the United States for 2 years, and I was aware that I went to a small university. And I started looking around, and there were people that had master's degrees, PhDs from Carnegie Mellon, Harvard, Yale, MIT, Princeton, you name it. And I thought to myself, what would I know that they don't already know?
Mm-hmm.
What value am I going to contribute? And so what that did, immediately I started undermining my own capabilities, underestimating my own worth. By the way, that's why the title is Show Your Worth, because when we do, like you said, no matter where we grow up, we have a tendency to be modest. We have a tendency to undermine our capabilities, to underestimate our worth. And what this did, obviously, it creates this negative mental chatter, right? Mm-hmm. And it instilled fear of speaking up. So while I did a really good job in my own project, I was afraid to speak up in any meetings. In fact, even in one-on-one conversations, I would think that they're all smarter than me. And so if I say something, I might sound stupid, or I might be stating the obvious. They might even fire me. Besides, they were the only company that even interviewed me. Maybe they didn't know what everybody else knew. But there's all this self-doubt that goes on in your head. Mm-hmm. And the good news for me, and the reason I say the good news for me, Sabrina, is what seemed like an adversity in my life was actually a blessing in disguise, because it forced me to overcome whatever was as an obstacle. And in this case, the obstacle was fear of speaking up. And if within 12 months, I didn't figure out a way to create unique value such that they couldn't replace me easily, they would not go through the expenses of extending my visa. So my dream of lifting myself and my family out of poverty would be very short-lived. And so that forced me to learn how to recognize these voices in our head, the voice of fear that was doing its job. Your voice of fear wants to keep you in your comfort zone. That's its job. But that recognition that while you have a voice of fear, you also have a voice of courage that you can feed and you can amplify with reasons why you should speak up. But in order for me to even do that, Sabrina, I had to have that inner victory, that mindset that went from I can't create value, my ideas don't matter, to my ideas do matter. And it's like the universe gave me this perfect experience of this one time on a Tuesday afternoon. We were discussing a problem of testing our software. And I had this idea, but the voice of fear loud in my head, don't speak up, Shalmina, you're going to sound stupid. So I didn't speak up. And it's as if this idea flew from my head into the head of the guy sitting right across from me. He said exactly what I was thinking. And after he was done, he got a lot of kudos. People are patting him on his back. And I heard someone tell him, what a unique way of solving this problem. And I thought to myself, oh my God, Shalmina, you've been trying to create unique value. And I did what most women do, go into the ladies' room and looked at myself in the mirror and chastise myself. But I'm telling myself, Shalmina, you should have spoken up. Your ideas do matter. And that inner victory, that shift from my ideas don't matter to my ideas do matter. And it took someone else stating my idea for me to recognize that my ideas matter. But once I recognized that I did have unique ways of solving problems, my ideas do matter. And if I speak up, then they will extend my visa and I will never have to be poor again. That gave me the courage. So that's how I fed my voice of courage. My voice of fear was just doing what it's supposed to do, but I made my voice of fear louder than I made my voice of courage louder than my voice of fear. But really, this recognition that these are voices in our own head, and we can intentionally decide which voice to quieten down and which voice to amplify and make louder by feeding it reasons why you should do something as opposed to why you shouldn't do something.
It's something that most people don't know. It's such a beautiful, wonderful concept. I love this. For almost 30 years, I've been an executive coach and consultant, ranging from entrepreneurs to executives and their teams in Fortune 100 companies. One of the key elements I've witnessed countless times that hold people back is an area you generally will not learn in school. That is leadership soft skills. This is what sets exceptional leaders apart from their peers. So I want to tell you something I'm working on that could help you be an exceptional leader and profoundly impact your career, income, and life. First, I want to ask you a few critical questions that may impact your current leadership role and career development. At work, are you well connected and politically savvy? Do you need clarification on what you need to do to get promoted? Do you have communication issues with leaders or direct reports? Would you like to develop job clarity and know the best roles you can excel in? Do you feel stuck and want higher pay and advancement opportunities? Or are you doing okay, but you know you're not maximizing your potential? If you can relate to any of these critical questions, especially if you are a mid-level manager, director, or higher, and seek opportunities, you will like what I'm working on. It will transform your leadership skills, help you stand out, and open new career opportunities much faster than you thought possible. I know there are many of you out there listening who would love to have me as your leadership coach or be a part of my Impact Executive Leadership Mastermind. Great, contact me. But if you're still not ready, I understand. That's why I want to give you a proven leadership roadmap and practical tools that have helped hundreds of leaders for a fraction of the cost of one-on-one coaching with me. This is a step-by-step online course designed for busy but motivated people like you. This cutting-edge leadership course will be released in the spring of 2024. If you want to know more, here's what you need to do. Just go to womensleadershipsuccess.com/contact and submit your contact information and put in the subject line Leadership Course. Thanks again for listening to my podcast and your commitment to your leadership success. Now, back to the show.
And we must recognize this. And that was the first time I recognized and I coined this term called the power quotient, because we own the power, and I call it our PQ. We own the power to intentionally pick an empowering response to a disempowering stimulus, whether that stimulus is internal or external. And frankly, the internal stimulus must be taken care of before we can fight the external battle. And so when you have this internal stimulus of fear, for example, you must understand that fear is just a voice in your head and that you own the power to not feed it and to feed the power of courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. Fear is still there, but courage is doing what you must do in spite of being scared.
Yeah, I think what's so important about what you're saying is you don't ignore it, actually confront it and and bring the courage in and come up with a different thing that you're going to do, that you have control over that. As a woman, so much in life, I thought I didn't have any control. And what you're saying is this is the ultimate control. You can decide if you're going to do the voice of fear or the voice of courage. I hope everybody just keeps replaying this over and over again because it's such an important thing that you're sharing.
That's how powerful we are. And we need to exercise our power quotient. Just like we have EQ and IQ, we also have our PQ. And let's not give our power away to disempowering stimulus, whether it's internal or external.
Right. You say embrace your power by intentionally choosing your response.
Yeah. And this is what it is.
That
because
is
situations don't define you. People are not going to be the way you want them to be. Situations are not always going to be the way you want them to be. But you can always choose to respond with your power and show your worth.
So can you say more about showing your worth, or how do you get aware of your worth? That's the thing I want to ask you.
Yeah.
How can we do that?
So your worth in the context of my book and in the context of emerging as a leader is the value that you contribute towards the success of your organization. So that recognition that I have something to contribute is the beginning of understanding your worth. And then the journey is, how do I continuously position myself to contribute more value towards my organization? How do I build more competencies? How do I build more confidence? How do I build the relationships? How do I build the personal branding? All these contribute towards your ability to create higher value for your organization, to your ability to show your worth to your organization. It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's not something you just have a certain amount. You just keep developing it.
Yes. And the more competent you become, the higher the value you create.
That's so beautiful. It's really exciting. So we're in a few minutes here, we're going to finish this part, and then so we're doing a 2-part show here today. So is there any summary of what you said that you'd like to say before we take a pause and do part 2?
For sure. I want everyone listening here to know that they are worthy, to know that they have value that they can contribute towards their organizations, their families, their community, humanity at large. And our job is to continue to increase that worth and continue to show it in every interaction.
Wow. Thank you so much. So we're going to pause here. And the next time in part 2, when you listen to that, we're going to talk about overcoming biases as you scale up the corporate ladder and how to build influence and persuasion within your company to get promoted. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening today. We hope this encourages you and helps you to be a better leader. Let me know what you think. Do you like this new additional format? Here's how you can let me know and connect with me. Please comment on the show notes on women's leadership success, or connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a private message. And could you do me a favor? Please share our podcast with friends and associates who would benefit from these targeted topics. Also, please subscribe and let me and your peers know the action you took on this topic via your comments and accolades in your favorite podcast platform.
Thank you for joining your host, Sabrina Braham, on another Women's Leadership Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can email her at sabrina@sabrinabraham.com. Since 1989, Sabrina and her team have helped hundreds of women managers, business leaders, and entrepreneurs with valuable trainings, articles, books, and executive coaching. For additional tips, interviews, and free access to Great Leaders Today mini course, visit www.womensleadershipsuccess.com.